CIA were very involved in getting this whole industry started. Submarine, which had nuclear warheads on it, the K-129, sank in the Pacific. We can't just go and pick them up because the Russians, it'll become an international incident. We might have World War III on our hands. And so they said, we need to, there's a lot of polymetallic nodules around them. And so we need, there was a false start back in the 70s when, and that's another story, right? Because the CIA were very involved in getting this whole industry started.
Really? Why so?
Well,
I've got some ideas. I got a feeling it doesn't have anything to do with mining.
it has nothing to do with mining, but it was a great cover story. Yeah. And the Russian submarine, which had nuclear warheads on it, the K-129, sank in the Pacific. It had set sail from a Russian port. And the Americans were, this is dating back to 1968, the Americans had already implanted listening devices on the seafloor around the Pacific so they could detect nuclear explosion and other activities. And so when they were tracking this submarine, and all of a sudden they heard an explosion, and the Russians didn't have this same technology installed in the oceans. And so the Americans quickly clocked onto it, and the CIA got involved. And but they had to have a reason to be out there because the Russians were looking for their lost submarine, and they'd had no idea where it was. They could just say, well, it left this port this time, and we last heard at this date in this location. So the CIA went ahead and started to plan how they could recover this. First, they needed to establish were the warheads in place, were they worth recovering? And when they decided, yes, they were, they said, well, actually, we can't just go and pick them up because the Russians, it'll become an international incident. We might have World War III on our hands. And so they said, we need to, there's a lot of polymetallic nodules around them. And so we need to use the recovery of these polymetallic nodules as the cover story to go and recover the sunken Russian submarine. So they thought, well, they're not going to believe that we, the government, are going to be involved. So who can we get to front it? Howard Hughes, because everyone thought he's a bit crazy. He'll be up for this. And so they reached out to Howard Hughes, and he said, yeah, of course, no problem. And so the CIA funded it all. And there were other companies involved, and the Glomar Explorer was, became the first deep sea exploration vessel and mining vessel. And it, that attracted other people into the industry because, of course, no one else knew about this. And so then you had other consortia formed, Shell and BP and Mitsubishi from Japan, and many other corporations became involved. And this whole industry was moving forward. But then the United Nations decided they wanted to get involved as well, because they were like, well, who owns the ocean? Like, we should all agree this set of rules. Like, we should share these resources in a more equitable manner. And so 169 countries now signed on to this treaty called UNCLOS. But what it meant was America had this leading position when it comes to polymetallic nodules and ocean metals. But then they decided to step back and see where this international consortia went. And so the mining companies involved then got busy looking for more minerals on land. But when you see this deposit, like, they estimate there are more than 20 billion tons of these.
Wow.
More than 20 billion tons. As I said, we have an estimated 2 billion tons on our license areas. So it's generally regarded we've got the best ground out there. But so you had all of these countries form this treaty, and of course, not form it, agree a treaty. But Ronald Reagan was the president then, and he's like, no way in the world. We're not going to join another international treaty. So America stood aside and said, well, because no one has sovereignty over the oceans, right? Mm-hmm. Every nation can traverse the oceans. Every nation has the rights to the seabed minerals on the floor, to to lay cables. But all of these other countries said, well, when it comes to the seafloor minerals, how about we agree a set of rules? And so they signed the treaty, but America did not. And so, it's been a pretty exciting year for us, last 12 months at least, because, we've pivoted our business away from this international organization to now focus entirely on permitting this resource through the US administration. And that really became possible with the election of President Trump.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. What percentage of that rock has precious metals in it?
Well, it's amazing, right? This forms through precipitation. So it grows a little bit like a pearl grows. And so we turn 100% of this into saleable material. And it's got about 33% pure metal. But the rest of the material there's some silica in there. There's a lot of crystallized water in there. So about 24% of it is moisture. But the rest of it, we all turn into saleable product. And that in itself is almost, well, very unique to this resource, because on land, you go looking for a copper deposit, and last year the average grade of copper mined was about 0.6 of 1%. So it means that you go digging up a ton of material, 1,000 kilograms of material, and you have to treat it and process it and cart it and take it places, looking for 6 kilograms of copper. So it's very inefficient, and it's very expensive, and it creates a lot of impacts. Whereas we lift these up, take them to shore, process them, and we turn it all into saleable material. So it's kind of unique.
You do the processing as well.
That's our plan.
Wow.
That's our plan.
Mine and process.
Yeah. And the reason why we're so excited about the US is because President Trump and his administration made reindustrialization a priority. Because for decades, America has been outsourcing mining and processing and refining to other parts of the world, particularly China. And then, of course, you wake up one day and you realize that your adversaries have control out of all of the critical minerals that you need. And it was a foolish playbook in hindsight, but it was hard and heavy industry. The world wanted to be involved in cool new industries. But when it comes down to it, if it ain't grown, it's mined. And so you can't just dream up a land-based mine. They don't just appear out of nowhere. And all of the obvious ones were found and developed. So that's why if you look at about half of our revenue comes from nickel, and 100% of the growth in nickel supply over the last 7 years has come from what we call rainforest nickel. And to get to it, you've got to remove the rainforest to dig up this material called nickel laterite. And of course, and we're not talking about, anything other than pristine, beautiful rainforests, which are filled with indigenous people in some cases, certainly filled with enormous amount of biodiversity and biomass, filled with cute, cuddly animals. And, led by China, it's just, bulldozing it out of the way. Mm-hmm. And that's the beginning of the impacts, because to process that material comes with a host of impacts. The waste material gets spilt into rivers and oceans and kills off the local industry, the fishing industries. And, for your listeners, just punch into your favorite search engine, rainforest nickel. And, I've had the first-hand experience of witnessing, in one particular region. It was in Indonesia, actually, where 10 years ago, there were no people focused on nickel mining. we visited there, my team and I, maybe 3 years ago. This town of 70,000 people had been built, all focused on nickel mining. Like 70,000 people.
70,000
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it
and
is.
and all of a sudden, and it was all 100% done by China. I mean, when China sets its mind on things, they become very, very impactful and successful.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.